Hello and welcome back to another Doctor Who action figure review on the Host Productions. In today's review I'm once again going to be taking a look at yet another B&M exclusive action figure collector set from the later half of 2022. In today's review, History of the Daleks Set 12, featuring Daleks from the 4th Doctor serial, Destiny of the Daleks. Now, very much like the previous review of the 11th set in the series, once more we have two drawn Daleks from the story, both of which have subtle but rather nice paint application changes, making them different from the original counterparts. So taking a look at the packaging for History of the Daleks Set 12, the overall layout is exactly the same to the rest of the releases as a part of this series. However, it does of course now feature the slightly amended box, which appeared within the previous wave. So in the bottom corner, it does of course state that both of these Daleks are from the second 4th Doctor Dalek serial from 1979. And from this, we have the title of the set, as well stating that this is the 12th release as a part of the series. And then we have the slightly amended packaging alongside the usual B&M exclusive limited edition sticker. In the top hand corner we have the stacked variation of the Doctor Who logo alongside some Gallifreyan text as a trim, and come to think of it, this is probably going to be the last ever time that this logo is utilised on a History of the Daleks collector set. Who knows, however, that might be completely wrong. They may decide to keep this logo for the B&M exclusive series, or they may decide to give it a brand new style guide altogether. One thing is certain, however, I certainly hope that we don't have any more B&M exclusives coming out anytime soon, as I am sick of the sight of the damn place after tracking down these ones. So below the logo we have the TARDIS graphic, and that does of course, as per usual, continue onto the side of the box. Same information to usual is printed on the top of the box, and flipping to the bottom we have some exciting company information. Turning the product around to the back now, we have exactly the same style guide to usual. This includes a story synopsis for Destiny of the Daleks, as well as a little bit of behind the scenes information about the Dalek props themselves. Much like my reviews of the previous History of the Daleks collector sets from the previous wave, I'm going to use this piece of footage for both reviews of sets 11 and 12 to discuss the packaging amendments. So to make the packaging recyclable, character options have basically limited the amount of plastic that is used within the box to one piece, which holds both of the Daleks in place. Appearance-wise, I really don't think this looks the best. It makes it rather difficult to spot various issues with the Daleks and purchasing it in store, but also it makes the product, in my opinion, seem quite cheap looking. Everything about these sets since the very beginning seemed to be suggesting that these were aimed towards the collector's market, but with the introduction of this packaging, I think that has kind of declined, in my opinion, because we now don't have that personalised background which is featured in each and every set to make each set unique and exciting and personal to the story. Now it's just a standardised white background, making each set feel not as special. Those of you who like to take their figures out of the box and then put them back in again for display, you are not able to do that with these sets. Once the Daleks are out of the box, they are out for good and the packaging will never be intact again. So who knows, it might be a grand plan to try and get collectors to purchase two. However, it's just really inconvenient, sadly, and again, I feel like it detracts from the overall quality of the product. His choices, the likes of this, but also the god-awful packaging which came with the First Doctor and TARDIS set, which is really making me question if I do actually want to continue collecting this series, which really says something given that this is a line that I've loved collecting since literally 2006. It's just a shame. I feel like it is living in the shadows of what this series used to be. So here we are for the billionth time taking a look at yet more classic series Daleks. However, these ones are particularly quite exciting. So we basically have two variations of Destiny Dalek, and what I really like is, despite the fact that they are both drones, making them excellent for army building, there is variations between the two. To get to the point immediately, I love this set and I think it is a vast improvement both quality-wise but also variant-wise compared to the Daleks that we got to see within the previous wave. I don't quite know what happened with the previous wave, but both sets really disappointed me in many different ways, from the likes of the articulation, the flexibility of the weaponry, the paint application. It just seemed a little bit all over the place. we have with this set is two excellently painted Daleks with lots of detail, but also, most excitingly for me as someone who's been collecting this series for quite a number of years, is that despite the fact that I have the previous Destiny of the Daleks releases, these Daleks are notably different, arguably more accurate to what is seen within the actual story, which makes this set really justified as a purchase. So what has made me react to these Daleks so positively? Well, it is the utilisation of a completely different shade of grey across the entirety of the Dalek body, basically creating from a visual side of things a completely different looking Dalek. Now, compared to the original Forbidden Planet exclusive releases, they used a rather light, almost pastel-y grey on those releases. This time round they've gone with a rather bluey tinted grey, which also has a rather glossy finish. I think this shade absolutely works. It applies to both of the Daleks within this set, and I think it definitely looks a lot more like the Daleks that we see within the story. But not only that, it is also really nicely painted. So it does of course cover the vast majority of the Dalek skirt. It has been really nicely done. And then of course we have the inclusion of the hemispheres, which as always have been given a lovely glossy black finish. But not only that, we actually have a wash which has been applied over the top to give the Dalek a little bit of character. This is merely a bit of silver paint application. The vast majority of the hemispheres kind of have a scuffed effect on them. Perhaps one of the things that were missing from some of the previous Daleks that have been included within this series, in particular some of the most recent sets, where the series started out with lots of lovely details such as washes being applied to the fender, and as the series progressed a number of the Daleks started to lose that detailing. It's great to see that return both on this set and the genesis of the Dalek set that was released alongside this one, because it makes the Dalek toy actually seem almost like a TV prop, as if it's been bashed around the BBC studio. So moving down now to the very bottom of the Dalek, for the first time in quite a while if I remember rightly, we actually have some different stuff going on with the fenders. Both of the Daleks follow the staggered two-stack formation, however have been painted slightly differently, which creates quite a stark difference between the two props. So starting off this time with the Dalek that sports the new dome lights, we have a base fender that is very similar visually to the Daleks seen within the genesis of the Dalek set 11 as a part of this series. So it has been sculpted in your regular matte black plastic, but as you can see over the top we have this absolutely superb silver wash that has been used, very much like how I mentioned within my review of set 11. I love the fact that this is returned. So now moving over to the Dalek with the Mini Cooper dome lights. Again, we have exactly the same sculpt, and the very bottom of the Dalek somewhat remains the same. So we do have that black plastic once again being used, and that lovely silver wash applied over the top, emphasising the various different panels within the fender, but also that midsection. And then rather unusually, at the very top of the midsection here, we have the inclusion of a silver paint application to kind of cap off the rest of the base. Now this stands out quite a lot, especially with that bluey greeny base colour which has been used across the rest of the Dalek design, and given the fact that this had just been slapped on above the Dalek sculpt, so it is slightly over the midpoint on the actual fender here, I think it is actually painted considerably neatly. Flipping one of the Daleks upside down, of course the usual company gubbins is presented on the bottom, as well as the two wheels and the central wheel at the front. It does of course allow the Dalek to manoeuvre around wherever you want him to be, probably trundling around the Dalek city trying to find Davros. Very much like History of the Daleks set 11, I really do love the format of this set, the way that we have two drawn Daleks, both of which represent two slightly different Dalek props, meaning between them, in particular from the midsection upwards, we have various paint application and sculpting changes to make both of the Daleks different in their own right. Starting off with the Dalek with the Mini Cooper dome lights, this is kind of your regular Dalek midsection to be honest, so both of them pretty much follow exactly the same sculpt, and you have the usual sculpting details that you come to expect. So around the midsection we do of course have the slat sculpt, so each individual slat does have the rivets at the top and bottom, and then in between this we also have the inclusion of the mesh, which has been given a really lovely texturing, emphasised with a kind of bluish tint, very much like the rest of the Dalek Dalek body. Now, something of which that you may notice is that there are a few little defects within the sculpt, such as here, and then also around to the opposite side as well. Just the occasional scratch here and there that isn't particularly too noticeable, but again, something of which just to look out for. Again, another one is kind of present here. I do really like that this wash has been applied because it just brings out that detailing a little bit more, and it was something of which that was absent within the Genesis Daleks. Moving the weaponry to the side ever so slightly, the Mini Cooper Dalek does in fact sport no circular section in the very middle of the weaponry boxes. Swapping this Dalek out for the Dalek with the new sculpted dome lights, we have an ever so slight difference, where the circular section is now present, and this has been emphasised with a lovely glossy black paint application that is considerably crisp. The midsection on the second Dalek within the set once again retains the slats and the mesh with pretty much exactly the same detailing on it, although you'll notice this time round we now have this black section running around the entirety of the bottom of the Dalek. This is something that was simply painted the same base colour as the rest of the Dalek on Dalek 1, and again has a lovely glossy black finish, making it stand out quite a lot. Also worth noting that the second Dalek of the set continues to have the problem of having various cracks and creases within the sculpting of the mesh. Between the two Daleks, I don't particularly have a preference as to which midsection I like more, but very much like the Genesis Daleks that I've previously reviewed, I like the fact that that variety is there. For the gun and manipulator arm, very much like the Genesis Daleks, there has been a number of changes made between the two Daleks in order to differentiate between the two Dalek props. Firstly, taking a look at the gun on the Mini Cooper Dalek, this is pretty much your regular design. So we have the regular Dalek gun with your usual different barrel sections. This has been sculpted in a lovely glossy black plastic, and as for the ball joint itself, this is exactly the same colour to the rest of the main Dalek body. Moving over now to the second Dalek of the set, featuring the new dome lights. Once again, we have the retention of exactly the same sculpt. Again, the gun is glossy black, but this time the ball joint has a rather unusual bronze finish. As for the manipulator arm on both of the Daleks, the ball joint has been painted exactly the same colour to the rest of the Dalek body, and the sculpting for the manipulator arm itself appears to be pretty much the same to other releases, but the paint application has been slightly revised. So the main stalk of the manipulator arm is a glossy black in keeping with the hemispheres and the slats, but as you go to the end of the manipulator arm, or it gets ever so slightly thinner into the actual sucker itself, this has a matte black finish. Again, a nice attention to detail. For those of you that have watched my previous reviews of Last Wave's history of the Daleks collector sets, you will know how frustrated I was with the appendages and simply how flexible they were. I'm very, very happy to see that on this wave they've now rectified that. They seem to be exactly the same plastic to what these Daleks used to be, meaning you can now move the gun, the manipulator arm and the eye stalk without the fear of it snapping, and it doesn't seem to bend much at all, which is absolutely perfect. I'm very happy to see that rectified. Very much like how I mentioned within my review of the history of the Daleks set 11, I really do love the paint application around the neck bin. It is considerably neat. I love the fact that all of the columns nicely match up, which is something that has been an issue with Daleks in the past. And of course this is exactly the same sculpt to usual, so the neck bin has the usual texturing of the mesh there in the very centre, and then we have the various rings running around the side. Always, however, Daleks can be incredibly problematic when it comes to quality control, so as always I do definitely recommend, if you have the opportunity to do so, going into store and physically picking your Daleks out in order to avoid quality control problems, such as paint leaks and sculpting defects. As you would expect, the dome of both of the Daleks are exactly the same to usual, with that lovely bluey grey finish, as opposed to the usual grey seen on the original Destiny releases. Taking a look at the first Dalek within the set, we are in rather familiar territory as this Dalek utilises the ridged Mini Cooper dome light, very much like the Genesis Daleks in History Set 11. This has been given a white frosted finish. And as for the second Dalek of the set with the black midsection, we have the introduction of a brand new dome light which has debuted as a part of this wave. Centre of the light is your usual curved design with a rather milky transparent finish. However, surrounding the side of this we have a flat base which has been emphasised with a lovely black rim. I really do like the introduction of this brand new dome light. Again, it really adds variety to these Daleks, but also shows that this series is hoping to improve the accuracy of the previous releases that have came out, but also at the same time, it allows this Dalek to be differentiated quite easily from the original rarer releases. It does make me think if character options are able to do small amendments such as sculpting new bulbs, is there a possibility that we could see the Dalek from the Five Doctors with that little peg at the very centre of the dome? I certainly hope so. And the excitement of new additions doesn't stop there, as I do believe we also have the introduction of a brand new eye stalk, which yes does look rather familiar to previous releases, but has been ever so slightly altered. So the main body of the stalk itself, as well as the base piece, has been painted exactly the same colour to the rest of the Dalek. Discs continue to have a lovely separated design, but this time around are more equal in size, as opposed to kind of getting bigger towards the centre. As per usual, the tip of the eye stalk has been painted a lovely glossy black, but this time around the surface of this central section here is much flatter and larger, and we do have that pupil there in the very middle, highlighted with a vibrant white paint application. Although something to note is that my second Dalek of the set does in fact have an ever so slight paint leak on this, which is a bit frustrating. Again, aiding the point, if you have the opportunity to do so, go into store and check the quality control for yourself. So in summary, for History of the Daleks Set 12, I'm so relieved to say that this series seems to be returning to some form of quality after having some rather average Daleks within the previous waves, and especially within the last wave, having Daleks seem to be a rather severe dip in quality. This wave returns to present two rather worthy Daleks to add to your collection, albeit someone who has the original Destiny of the Daleks variants, or even if you're someone who will be adding these Daleks to your collection for the first ever time. Very much like Set 11, I love the fact that both of the Daleks presented within this set are drones, making it a perfect opportunity to army build, but I also love the fact that we have subtle variations between the two props, making each Dalek new and exciting. I love the return of the wash on the fender, really adding to the Dalek's character, and I love the upgrade to the overall colour scheme, making it very different to the original Destiny counterparts. And very much like how I mentioned within my review of Set 11, I love the fact that this series is continuing to slowly implement new additions, such as the newly sculpted bulbs, but also the new addition eye stalks, making these Daleks new and exciting, although, let's face it, at the same time, we've already seen many Daleks before, so when you get this set, despite the fact of it being very good, you kind of know what to expect. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on The Host Productions for regular Doctor Who content. Have a nice day, and I shall see you all next time.